The golden ship of the Galactic Coalition glided through space like a leaf on water. Its sleek design reflected distant starlight, making it look more like an art piece than a diplomatic vessel. Inside, Ambassador Green of the Coalition stood tall, his four arms crossed behind his back, as he watched the approaching human space station through the main viewport. "These humans are quite primitive," he said to his assistant. "Look at their basic solar collectors and those crude defense turrets. This will be an easy addition to our coalition." The assistant nodded, taking notes on a floating screen. The coalition had done this hundreds of times before. Find a new spacefaring race, show them their place in the galaxy, and add them to their ever-growing empire. It was almost boring now. The human space station grew larger in their view. It wasn't ugly, exactly, but it lacked the flowing grace of coalition architecture. The station was all sharp angles and practical designs, with none of the artistic touches that marked a truly advanced civilization. "Opening communications now," the ship's captain announced. "The humans are responding." A flat screen appeared in front of them, showing a human in a blue uniform. "This is Commander Smith of New Horizons Station. Welcome to human space." Ambassador Green stepped forward, spreading his four arms in the traditional greeting of peace. "Greetings, lesser species. I am Ambassador Green of the Galactic Coalition. We have come to offer you the great honor of joining our empire as a protected race." The human's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "I'm sorry, did you say lesser species?" "Of course," Green continued, not noticing the warning signs. "Your technology is clearly primitive, your ships are basic, and you've barely left your solar system. Under our guidance, you might advance enough in a few centuries to earn limited voting rights in coalition matters." Commander Smith's face hardened. "Ambassador, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Humanity doesn't submit to anyone. We're happy to discuss peaceful relations as equals, but we won't be joining your coalition as servants." Green laughed, a sound like tinkling bells. "Oh, you misunderstand. This isn't a request. It's simply how things work in civilized space. You join willingly, or we demonstrate why resistance is pointless. Then you join anyway." "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" "Simply a statement of fact. We've brought peace to 1,000 worlds this way. Now shall we discuss the terms of your submission?" Commander Smith leaned forward. "Let me be very clear, Ambassador. We decline. Humanity will not submit. We are willing to be friends, allies, or trading partners, but we will not be servants." Green sighed dramatically. They always want to do this the hard way. He turned to his captain. "Send the signal to the fleet. Begin with the mining colony on their outer world. Something small, just to show them we're serious." "Sir," his assistant interrupted, "perhaps we should study them more first. Their technology readings are unusual." "Nonsense," Green waved a hand dismissively. "I've done this 100 times. Show them our power, they surrender, everyone goes home happy." The signal was sent. 3 coalition warships, hidden behind the system's outer planets, began moving toward the small human mining colony on Pluto. They expected the humans to panic when they realized they were surrounded. Instead, Commander Smith just shook his head. "Ambassador, I'm giving you one chance to recall your ships. What you're about to do is a terrible mistake." "The only mistake," Green smiled, "was your refusal to accept reality. Don't worry, no one will be permanently harmed. Just enough damage to prove our point." "Very well," Smith said quietly. "Remember that we tried to be peaceful." He pressed a button on his desk. "Central Command, we have a code black. Coalition forces are moving to attack Pluto colony, requesting immediate response." Green was about to make another smug comment when his ship's sensors began screaming warnings. Something massive was coming out of hyperspace, something that made his ship's AI start running probability calculations that all ended in death. The last thing Ambassador Green saw before his ship's emergency systems yanked them into retreat was a massive black shape emerging from hyperspace. It was longer than 10 of his ships combined, bristling with weapons that his sensors couldn't even classify. And on its side, in letters that seemed to absorb the very starlight around them, was written, HMS TGUNDRCAI. Had been ready for this moment. They had always been ready. The HMS Thunderchild floated in the darkness of space like a shark in deep waters. Its black hull swallowed nearby starlight, making it look like a hole in reality. At nearly 5 miles long, it was the largest warship ever built by human hands. Captain Robert Walker stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the coalition ships scrambling to regroup. The bridge was silent except for the soft beeping of computers and the quiet breathing of his crew. Unlike the bright, colorful ships of the coalition, the bridge of the Thunderchild was all steel gray and practical displays. Status report, Walker said, his voice calm and steady. 3 coalition warships near Pluto colony, sir, replied Officer Thomas from his station. Their weapons are hot, but they haven't fired yet. They seem confused by our presence. Walker nodded. The aliens had expected to find helpless miners. Instead, they found humanity's first true battleship, a ship that had taken 50 years to build and contained technology that would make their coalition scientists cry. Open all frequencies, Walker ordered. Let's give them one chance to leave. The communications officer pressed several buttons. Channel open. Sir. Walker cleared his throat. Coalition vessels, this is Captain Robert Walker of the HMS Thunderchild. You are in violation of human space and threatening a civilian colony. Withdraw immediately, or we will respond with force. The largest coalition ship responded with a video message. Their commander appeared on the main screen, his 4 arms moving in agitated patterns. Human vessel, you are outnumbered 3 to 1. Your primitive technology cannot hope to match our advanced weapons. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. Walker actually smiled. Officer Jones, please give our visitors a small demonstration. Power up the point defense grid. Minimal charge. Yes, sir, Jones replied, his fingers dancing over his console. Point defense grid at 2% power. Around the massive black hull of the Thunderchild, hundreds of small ports opened. Tiny balls of blue light began to glow within each one. The coalition ship's sensors went crazy, trying to understand what they were seeing. Impossible, the alien commander whispered. Their scans showed energy readings that shouldn't exist in normal space. Your power output, it can't be real. I assure you it's very real, Walker replied. This is your final warning. Leave human space or face the consequences. The alien commander puffed up with pride. We are the coalition. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We will not be threatened by primitives. All 3 coalition ships opened fire at once. Energy beams and plasma bolts streaked across space toward the Thunderchild. Walker sighed. They never learn. Point defense grid, intercept those shots. Show them what human engineering can do. The tiny blue lights around the Thunderchild's hull flared. Thousands of precise energy pulses shot out, each one intercepting an incoming alien weapon. The space between the ships lit up like a fireworks display as every single coalition shot was destroyed before it could reach the human vessel. All shots intercepted, sir, Jones reported. Point defense grid still at 2% power. The alien commander's face had turned pale. Their most powerful weapons had just been swatted aside like flies by what the humans called a minimal charge. How is this possible? He stammered. Our sensors indicate your defenses are powered by artificial quantum singularities. But that's theoretical science. Walker stepped closer to the screen. Not for us. You see, while you were busy conquering peaceful races, humanity was preparing for war. We hoped we'd never need ships like the Thunderchild, but we built them anyway. Because humanity learned long ago that peace is guaranteed not by submission, but by strength. He turned to his weapons officer. Power up the main gun. Let's show them why they called Earth a death world. The front of the Thunderchild began to split open like a blooming flower made of darkness. Inside, something began to glow with a light that hurt to look at. The Coalition ship's computers started screaming warnings about gravitational distortions and space-time anomalies. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Coalition warships didn't know what to do. They faced something they had never encountered before. A species that hadn't just matched their technology, but had surpassed it in ways they couldn't understand. The lesson was clear. Humanity wasn't prey. They were the predators they had always feared to meet. In the grand meeting hall of the Coalition Command Center, Admiral Blue paced back and forth, his forearms twitching with nervous energy. The holographic reports floating around him told a story he couldn't believe. Before him stood the commanders of 20 different Coalition species, all waiting for his response. "This must be some kind of mistake," he muttered, staring at the images of the black human ship. No single vessel could have these capabilities. One of the younger commanders, Captain Red, stepped forward. "Sir, I've analyzed the sensor data myself. The human vessel, this Thunderchild, it's unlike anything we've ever seen." The Admiral waved one of his hands dismissively. "Impossible. They're primitives. They barely have space travel." "That's what we thought." Another commander spoke up. "But look at these readings." The holographic display zoomed in on the Thunderchild's hull. Detailed scans showed layers of material that seemed to break the laws of physics. The outer layer was some kind of dark matter composite, compressed and formed into armor plating. Something Coalition scientists had declared impossible centuries ago. "And there's more," Captain Red continued, his voice shaking slightly. "Their power core, it's not just one quantum singularity. They've somehow managed to create and control multiple artificial black holes. They're using them in ways our scientists can't even understand." The room erupted in worried whispers. Creating even a tiny artificial black hole was theoretical science for the Coalition. These humans were using them as batteries. "The reports from our ships are spreading through the fleet," another officer added. "They're calling it the Black Death. Our crews are afraid." Admiral Blue slammed one of his hands on the table. "Afraid of one ship? We have thousands." "Sir," Captain Red pulled up another hologram. "Watch this footage from the encounter." The display showed 3 Coalition warships firing everything they had at the Thunderchild. Their most powerful weapons, capable of cracking planets, were casually swatted aside by tiny points of blue light. "Their point defense grid," Red explained. "It's operating on principles we've never seen. The targeting computer's response time is faster than our best AI systems. And according to these readings, that was at 2% power." The room fell silent. Even Admiral Blue stopped pacing. 2%. Someone whispered. "And their main weapon," Red continued, bringing up new images. "When they started charging it, our sensors detected distortions in space-time itself. Whatever they've built, it's not just advanced technology. It's something else entirely." An older commander raised his hand. "Could they have stolen this technology from someone else?" "No." Red shook his head. "Every part of that ship is distinctly human in design. They didn't copy anyone's homework. They did this all on their own." Admiral Blue finally sat down, all 4 arms drooping. "How? How did we miss this? Our scouts said they were primitive." "We looked at their civilian ships," Red explained. "Their cargo vessels, their mining ships, their passenger transports. We never thought to ask why we couldn't detect their military vessels. We never wondered what they were hiding in the darkness between their stars." New reports began flooding into the room. The Coalition's best scientific minds had analyzed the Thunderchild's capabilities. Their conclusions were disturbing. According to this, Red read from the latest report, humans come from what we would classify as a death world. Their gravity is 1.3 times our standard. Their atmosphere is corrosive by our standards. They evolved as pursuit predators who can recover from injuries that would kill most species. And now they've built this. Admiral Blue gestured at the image of the black ship. Yes. Red nodded. They took their natural survival traits and applied them to their technology. That ship isn't just a weapon, sir. It's humanity's way of saying they're ready for anything the galaxy might throw at them. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. The Coalition had spent centuries becoming the strongest force in known space, but they had done it through numbers, through overwhelming force against weaker opponents. These humans, they had done something different. They had built something that made the Coalition's entire fleet look obsolete. As the commanders stared at the image of the Thunderchild, one thought echoed through all their minds. What else were these humans hiding? Lieutenant Anna Miller sat at her targeting station on the Thunderchild's bridge, her fingers hovering over the holographic controls. 20 Coalition warships had just appeared around them, their weapons charging. The aliens had decided to send their best ships to deal with the human threat. "They're surrounding us, sir," she reported to Captain Walker. "Standard Coalition attack pattern. They think they can overwhelm our defenses with numbers." Walker nodded, looking calm despite being outnumbered. "Let them try." "Status of our systems." "All green," Officer Thomas called from his station. "Dark matter shields at full power. Point defense grid ready. Main gun charged but cool." The largest Coalition ship, easily twice the size of its companions, moved to the front of their formation. Its commander appeared on the main screen, trying to look confident despite his trembling upper arms. "Human vessel," the alien commander's voice boomed. "You face the pride of Coalition, our finest battle group. Surrender now, or be destroyed." Walker didn't even bother to respond. He just nodded to Miller. "Show them what our targeting systems can do." Miller smiled. While the aliens had been talking, her targeting computer had been working. Unlike the Coalition's AI systems, which could only track a few hundred targets at once, her computer had been designed by humans who grew up playing video games. It could track thousands. The Coalition ships opened fire all at once. The space around the Thunderchild lit up with energy beams, plasma bolts, and exotic particles. It looked like enough firepower to crack a small moon. "Point defense grid engaged," Miller announced. Her fingers danced across the controls, directing the thousands of tiny defense turrets around the Thunderchild's hull. Each one fired with perfect precision, intercepting the incoming attacks. The Coalition commanders watched in horror as their combined firepower was neutralized by what looked like tiny sparkles of blue light. "Impossible," one alien commander whispered. "They're blocking everything. How can their targeting be so precise?" What they didn't know was that Miller had spent years training on simulator games before joining the Navy. To her, tracking multiple targets wasn't just a job. It was something humans had been practicing for fun for centuries. "Sir," she called out, "they're trying to concentrate their fire on our rear quadrant. They think they found a weak spot." Walker smiled. "Let them think that." Power reading. "Point defense still at 5% power, sir. We could do this all day." The Coalition ships adjusted their formation, clustering behind the Thunderchild. Their sensors had detected slightly weaker energy readings in that area, and they thought they'd found a vulnerability. "Should we turn to face them, sir?" Thomas asked. "No," Walker replied. "Let them learn the hard way. Lieutenant Miller, activate the rear batteries. Show them why assuming is dangerous." Miller pressed a new sequence of controls. The back of the Thunderchild, which had appeared less defended, suddenly bristled with new weapon ports. The Coalition ships barely had time to register the change before precise beams of energy lanced out, slicing through their supposedly superior shields like they weren't even there. "4 enemy ships disabled, sir," Miller reported. "No casualties. I targeted their engines and weapons only." The Coalition fleet scattered in panic. Their formation broke apart as ships tried to escape the unexpected counterattack. But the Thunderchild's targeting systems tracked every movement perfectly. "How?" the Coalition commander demanded, his voice cracking. "Your targeting systems are beyond anything we've ever seen." Walker finally stood up. addressing the enemy for the first time. You assumed that because we were younger than you, we must be inferior. But while you were busy conquering peaceful races, humanity was preparing for the worst. Every game our children played, every simulation we ran, every piece of science fiction we wrote, it was all preparation for this moment. He gestured to Miller. Lieutenant, disable their flagship. Let's show them the difference between quantity and quality. Miller's hands moved in a blur. The Thunderchild's weapons spoke again, and the massive coalition flagship suddenly found itself without engines, weapons, or shields. The remaining coalition ships watched in stunned silence as their most powerful vessel was neutralized in seconds by weapons they couldn't even understand. The battle had barely begun, and already the legend of the Black Death was growing. The remaining coalition ships hovered in space, their commanders watching in disbelief as their mighty flagship drifted powerless. The Thunderchild's black hull seemed to grow even darker as its main weapon began to power up again. Main gun charging. Officer Thomas reported from his station. Mass driver ready in 30 seconds. Captain Walker stood at the center of his bridge, watching the coalition fleet's desperate attempts to regroup. Send them one final warning, he ordered. Let's show them we're not barbarians. The communications officer opened all channels. Coalition vessels, this is your final warning. Withdraw now, or we will demonstrate our main weapon. You have 30 seconds to comply. On the coalition ships, panic was spreading. Their sensors were detecting energy readings that shouldn't be possible. The front of the Thunderchild was opening like a massive flower made of black metal, revealing something that made their scientific instruments stop working entirely. What is that weapon? One of the coalition commanders asked, his voice shaking. The mass driver, Walker answered calmly. A weapon that breaks several laws of physics. Would you like to see it in action? The coalition ships started to turn, trying to flee. But they had forgotten something important about human warfare. Always watch your escape routes. Sir, Miller reported from her targeting station, they've noticed the gravity nets. While the coalition had been focused on the Thunderchild's front, the human ship had been quietly deploying gravity manipulation devices behind their fleet. Now the alien ships found themselves trapped, their engines struggling against invisible forces that held them in place. Time's up, Walker announced. Officer Thomas, demonstrate the mass driver. Target that empty space between their ships. Minimal power. Thomas nodded, his fingers moving across his console. Mass driver charging. 3, 2, 1. The weapon fired. There was no beam of light, no explosion, no traditional weapon effect. Instead, a perfect sphere of distorted space shot out from the Thunderchild's front section. As it passed between the coalition ships, they were tossed about like leaves in a storm, their artificial gravity failing and their shields crumpling. When the effect passed, every coalition ship was spinning in space, their crews trying desperately to understand what had just happened. What was that? The coalition commander demanded, his image shaking on the view screen. A weapon that manipulates mass itself, Walker explained. That shot was at 1% power, and we deliberately missed you. At full power, aimed directly at a target, he left the sentence unfinished. The coalition crews watched in horror as their sensors finally processed what had happened. The mass driver had temporarily increased the mass of a small section of space to nearly that of a black hole, then immediately dispersed it, if it had hit one of their ships directly. That's impossible, one of the alien scientists whispered. You can't just change the mass of space itself. Humanity has done many impossible things, Walker replied. We split the atom. We mapped our own DNA. We taught rocks to think. Did you really believe we wouldn't find a way to weaponize gravity itself? The coalition ships hung there, trapped by human gravity nets, their most powerful weapons proven useless, facing a weapon that broke the laws of physics. Your shields are down, Walker continued. Your engines are struggling. You've seen only a fraction of what the Thunderchild can do. What happens next is your choice. On their ships, The coalition commanders looked at their crews. They saw the fear in their eyes, the realization that they had badly underestimated these humans. These weren't primitives playing with technology they didn't understand. These were beings who had mastered physics itself and turned it into a weapon. The coalition commander's voice was barely a whisper when he finally spoke. We surrender." Walker nodded. "A wise choice. Lieutenant Miller, deactivate the gravity nets. Let them limp home. Let them tell others what they saw here today." As the coalition fleet retreated, their ships still showing signs of damage from the mass driver's indirect hit, the crew of the Thunderchild watched in silence. They had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity had revealed itself not just as a new player in galactic politics, but as a force that even the mighty coalition would learn to fear. 2 days after the battle, Captain Walker stood in the Thunderchild's communication room. The walls were covered with screens showing hundreds of alien news broadcasts. Every coalition species was talking about the human ship that had defeated their best fleet. "Are we ready to broadcast?" he asked the communications officer. "Yes, sir. We've hacked into every major coalition communication network. When you speak, the entire galaxy will hear it." Walker straightened his uniform. This message would define humanity's place in the galaxy. He nodded to the officer. "Begin transmission." Across coalition space, on millions of planets and ships, regular broadcasts suddenly stopped. Instead, they showed the bridge of the Thunderchild. Captain Walker stood there, the black walls of his ship making him look like he was speaking from the depths of space itself. "People of the coalition," he began, his voice calm but firm. "I am Captain Walker of the Human Defense Force. You know us as the species that recently defeated your most powerful battle group. But that's not why I'm speaking to you today." He paused, letting his words sink in. In the Coalition High Command Center, Admiral Blue and his officers watched nervously. "For centuries, your coalition has expanded through force. You find new species, declare them primitive, and force them to submit. Today that ends." Walker pressed a button, and the broadcast split into multiple screens. Each one showed a different human battleship, each as large and dark as the Thunderchild. "The vessel you encountered was not a unique ship. It was simply the first one we revealed. Humanity has an entire fleet of these battleships, hidden in the dark spaces between stars, waiting. We built them not because we wanted to fight, but because we understood a simple truth that your coalition forgot." The screen showed clips from the recent battle, coalition weapons being swatted aside, the mass driver's demonstration, the perfect targeting of human weapons. True peace doesn't come from forcing others to submit. It comes from mutual respect and understanding. The Thunderchild didn't defeat your fleet just to show our strength. We did it to show you that your way of doing things must change. In Coalition High Command, Admiral Blue sank into his chair. The humans hadn't just built one impossible ship. They had an entire fleet of them. "These are our terms," Walker continued. "First, the coalition will immediately withdraw from all human space. Second, you will recognize humanity as a sovereign power, equal to your coalition. Third, you will end your policy of forced submission for new species." He leaned forward slightly. "If you accept these terms, humanity is prepared to share some of our defensive technology with you. Not our weapons, you haven't earned that trust yet, but enough to protect coalition worlds from genuine threats." The broadcast showed more images, human cities, peaceful spacecraft, scientists working in laboratories. "We don't want war. We never did. That's why we hid our military power until it was needed. But make no mistake, if you force us to fight, we will. And now you know what that means." In homes and ships across coalition space, people watched in silence. They saw the quiet confidence in the human captain's eyes, the advanced technology their sensors could barely understand, the promise of either peace or devastating war. "You have 24 hours to respond," Walker said. "Remember, what you saw in the battle was just one ship using minimal power. Imagine what our entire fleet could do if truly provoked." The screen showed one final image. All the human battleships together, their black hulls making them look like a fleet of artificial black holes against the stars. The choice is yours, Coalition. You can have humanity as an ally or an enemy. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the Coalition in stunned silence. In their high command center, Admiral Blue looked at his fellow officers. "Get me the Coalition Council," he said quietly. Tell them we need to vote on accepting the humans' terms." As emergency meetings were called across Coalition space, the Thunderchild maintained its position, a silent reminder of humanity's power. They had hidden their strength for centuries, building and preparing in secret. Now the galaxy would never be the same. The Grand Hall of the Coalition Council was silent as Admiral Blue finished his presentation. The massive screen behind him showed detailed analysis of the human battleship Thunderchild and its capabilities. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in shocked silence. In conclusion, Blue said, his forearms trembling slightly, "We severely underestimated humanity. Our scientists have confirmed that their technology is centuries ahead of ours in several key areas." An older council member stood up, his scales reflecting the dim light. "How did we miss this? How did a species so young develop such advanced technology?" The Admiral clicked a button, bringing up an image of Earth. "We made a crucial mistake. We thought their homeworld was primitive. The truth is, Earth is what we classify as a death world." Murmurs spread through the council chamber as data about Earth appeared on the screen. Gravity 30% stronger than Coalition standard. Atmospheric pressure that would crush many of our species. Extreme temperature variations. Natural disasters that reshape continents. And the humans. They evolve as pursuit predators in this environment. Another council member spoke up. "But that doesn't explain their technology. Their civilian ships looked so basic." Blue nodded. "That was intentional. While we were judging them by their cargo ships, they were building the most advanced war fleet the galaxy has ever seen. They hid their true capabilities, preparing for the day someone like us would try to conquer them." The screen changed to show human history. Wars, technological advances, medical breakthroughs, and space exploration. "Look at their history," Blue continued. "Every major advance in human technology came from facing challenges. They split the atom because of war. They reached space because of competition. They cured diseases that would have wiped out other species. Their entire civilization is built on overcoming impossible odds." He brought up images of the Thunderchild's weapon systems. "Their mass driver technology alone breaks 12 laws of physics that we thought were unbreakable. Their point defense systems are more accurate than our best targeting computers. Their dark matter armor shouldn't even be possible to manufacture." The council leader finally spoke, her voice echoing through the chamber. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "I am suggesting that we accept their terms, not just because we fear their fleet, but because humanity has proven themselves to be exactly what our coalition needs." Confused whispers filled the room. Blue continued, his voice growing stronger. "Think about it. For centuries, we've grown comfortable. We find weaker species and force them to submit. We've stopped innovating, stopped pushing boundaries. But humanity, they built impossible ships just in case they needed them. They advanced their technology not through conquest, but through determination and ingenuity." He showed final footage from the battle. The Thunderchild effortlessly disabling the Coalition's best ships without causing a single casualty. They could have destroyed our fleet. Instead, they disabled our ships with surgical precision. They showed not just power, but restraint. Not just technology, but wisdom. The council leader leaned forward. "And what of their terms?" "Simple and fair," Blue replied. "They want their independence. They want us to stop bullying younger species. And in return, they'll share defensive technology to protect coalition worlds. They're offering us a chance to become something better than conquerors." The chamber erupted in discussion. After several hours of debate, the vote was unanimous. The coalition would accept humanity's terms. Later that day, as Captain Walker received the official acceptance, he smiled slightly. The Thunderchild's mission had succeeded beyond expectations. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not through submission, but through strength tempered with wisdom. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The Coalition learned to respect rather than dominate. New species were welcomed as equals rather than servants. And humanity. They finally revealed more of their advances, helping to usher in a new age of exploration and discovery. The black hulls of human battleships became a common sight in troubled regions, not as threats, but as guardians. The ships that had been built for war became the shields of peace, and it all started with one look at humanity's battleship, the day the mighty Coalition learned to fear not just humanity's power, but their potential. The legend of the Thunderchild would be told for centuries to come, a reminder that true strength lies not in conquering others, but in being ready to defend what matters most.